Ooh, hello everybody. We seem to actually have people here already. I'm surprised. If somebody would mind just saying in the chat that we are live and you can hear my wonderful dulcet tones, it will stop me from worrying about breaking this setup. That'd be wonderful. Thank you. Oh, fantastic. Thank you, Dave. You have made my life a lot easier so I no longer have to have a panic attack. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the first ever virtual fusion. I deeply apologize for any technical problems, but Hannah has left me, the internet's Muppet, in control of our technology. So I apologize now and profusely for anything that happens. I hope you're all doing wonderfully, and it's great to see people. So, I'm not Jim. I think that's the easiest way of describing it. And I'm here as your host. My name is actually Mike, for those of you who have no idea who the hell I am. So, we do have a little bit of housekeeping and warnings and all that stuff at the beginning. So, firstly, we are still being supported by some wonderful companies in the universe. We are being supported by Majestic, the one and only true love of the Birmingham tech scene. Well, that's a lie, but they are a giant group of people who love the tech scene. They are SEO tooling, etc. I believe they've done some more stuff in the last few months, but I haven't been able to keep on top of them. We are also being supported by Vonage. You'll probably all remember them from when we were in person, and they used to be under the name of, what do you call it? Nexmo. That's what they used to be called. So they're a telecommunications API. And then there's Logs.io, and I'm the representative of that. So if you have any questions, feel free to shoot them at me, and I will flounder and attempt to answer them whilst failing probably. So the Logs.io is a observability platform, and we are all here to support the Birmingham tech scene as much as possible in the form of Fusion. We also have partners, and these guys are still going strong. Hack the Midlands is going to be running in 2 months' time, I believe, as a virtual event. Essentially, it's going to be a Discord server on steroids for 3 days. I'm actually looking forward to being part of that. We have Mind, who are also providing a talk this afternoon. We've got Cryogenics, which is the formal name of our own lovely Stuart language. And then we've got School of Code, Code Bar, Code Your Future. And yeah, so, oh yes, before I forget, School of Code. If anybody's from the School of Code, feel free to say hi. We're all actually lovely, friendly people, especially if you're part of the new cohort. It's actually, great to see that people actually want to get involved in technology that aren't crusty old people like me. So after that, this is what I get for running 2 keyboards and 2 mice at once. My brain can't handle which one I'm meant to handle. There we go. We also have the Code of Conduct, and ever since Hannah and Andy, our lords and saviors of Fusion, finally got around to releasing their website circa 3 years late, we actually have a Code of Conduct accessible to everybody. So if you haven't been and read the Code of Conduct, please have a quick gander at it. To quote Bill and Ted, be excellent to everybody, and to quote Will Wheaton, don't be a dick. So that's the general rules of it. So please play nice in the comments and the chat, and we will see where we can go from there, having some fun. And then, you know what? You've all come here to watch 4 talks and, enjoy some technology, some insight, and some loveliness from the universe. So first up, we have Semiu, who I am going to invite into the chat after I have got everything wrong. There we go. Hi, Semiu. How's it going?
Hiya. Okay.
So if I remember correctly, you were a doctor, a lecturer, and researcher at... oh, my Lord, I've forgotten the university. I was reading this 5 minutes ago.
Aston University, and I'm not yet a doctor. Still have a few months to go, I think, if I'm lucky.
If you're lucky. Oh, all these years of research,
I know.
hard work. So, what is it you're going to be talking today? And I actually have your slides. Here we go. Are you all ready to give your talk?
Yes, can you see my screen?
We can see your screen, which means if I can see it, so can everybody else. So, please, hit it. Enjoy in educating us.
Okay, thank you. Right, so good evening, everyone. I think I've got you for about 20 minutes or so. And in that period, we'll be talking about BullStop, which, as was earlier alluded to, is something I have developed as part of my research, looking into cyberbullying, into ways in which you can detect cyberbullying online, and also not just detecting it, doing something about it, preventing it. Just a little background about myself. I'm actually doing research part-time, so I've actually been doing this research for 7 years. And in that period, I had a baby that is now, 7 years old. So time's flies. But my day job is as an architect. I'm a cloud architect. I specialize in IoT, machine learning, and big data. And I put blockchain there, but I'm mostly an anti-blockchain type person, really. PhD researcher at Aston University. My research interest, and this will become a little bit clearer as we go through the talks, is around artificial intelligence, social media, and HCI, which deals with how do you design interfaces for different type of people. In a previous life or a future life, I used to make short movies, films. I hardly get the time to do that anymore. And I've actually written some novella under a pseudonym, which I'm not sharing, just so you don't get an idea how bad they were, what I've written. And I think that's probably my real full-time job is as a driver and an entertainer for my family, which I've got my other wrong. That should actually come first. So what I've got here, that's an agenda sort of. I'll try to stick to that as much as I can, but we'll see what it takes us. I'll give you a very quick whiz through BullStop. We'll say the 5 minutes intro, might be more. We'll look at something called participatory design, deep learning, which is a subfield of artificial intelligence, why the interest in cyberbullying and some of the challenges I faced in the research and also developing this app. And what comes next, what am I going to do next with this app? So BullStop is, well, essentially it's an app. I suppose it's more than an app, but it's easier to think of it as an app. And the whole idea is it's designed to help. It's primarily designed for young people, but it can be used by anybody really, to help them manage their social media account and protect them from cyberbullying. And the way it does this is, they download the app and then they're able to connect their social media account to the app, and it will then regularly check their messages, posts, comments, and the likes, and it then uses an AI model to analyze the message and then try to determine if there's offensive content in there, somebody's trying to bully them, and what type of bullying it is, and then it can then take actions on that. Now, this is based on, like I said, my research with the Aston University. And I've kind of done some bullets on what, if in a 4 bullet point of what BullStop really is. So it doesn't only just analyze the message that you're receiving, it also looks at what the person is sending as well. So you analyze it both way. It uses a deep learning based AI. Now I'll talk briefly about deep learning and what different that makes. But essentially, the AI model understands written language, so you understand the context of the language. It's actually designed to work with multiple social networks, and I'll talk a little bit more about that when in the last couple of slides around the challenges I faced. And obviously, because of my background, I've tried to leverage things like cloud technology, containerization, to allow it to scale. Because one of the things I discovered early on in my research was some of the existing work that's been done in this space cannot cope with, with being deployed into, say, Twitter, for example, because just the sheer volume of data we need to process. So that's kind of the things that factor in doing this. A very, very, very high level overview of the system. So like I said, you've got a mobile app, and essentially the app is just an interface, really, just a way for you to interact with a much larger and bigger system. And that mobile app, it's currently available on the Google Play Store for now. You could download it and install it on your phone. And it's as part of the installation or the configuration process, you will connect that to your social media account. In this case, Twitter is the one that's currently supported. And then it would regularly, I think, every 2 minutes at the moment. I keep changing that, but I think the last time was 2 minutes. It will pull data from Twitter. So any DMs or private message that have been sent to you, or new follower, or things like that, it will pull that in on a schedule. It sends it out to a queuing system in the cloud. You'll also notice that it's also got a webhook. So essentially, there are two ways in which it tries to get this data. The reason being, with Twitter, you can also get Twitter to send notifications. So when a new message is received, you can send a notification, or you've got a new follower. Now, the reason I've got two ways to get data is if anyone does work with the Twitter notification system, you know that it's actually not reliable, and it wasn't designed to be so. They don't actually claim for it to be reliable. So you might get a notification for a message that you've received maybe an hour later, or it might be a minute later, or it might be a few seconds later. It's just, there's no guarantee. So I had to find another mechanism to be able to. So that's one of the challenges first together. But I've got those two ways in there, and they will both go into the message queue. And then from that queue, there's a module I call an abuse detection module. So essentially, this just houses the AI model that then it picks up the message of the queue, and then it will analyze that and then sends it to something I've called the mashallah, for want of a better name. And as that kind of implied, that does stuff. So based on the content of that message, as well as your settings in the app. So if you say, oh, I have a very, very low threshold for, I don't know, offensive content, pretty much most of what anybody sends to me offends me, then you can, there's like a slider which you can use to configure that in the app, and it will pretty much delete any message that you receive that that's only slightly offensive. It will get rid of that. And then you can also do things like telling it to block people, so it can block people automatically, either immediately, or you might want to give them, I don't know, after 3 or 4 offensive message. So that's what the mashallah does. But that's a very high level overview, but it kind of gives you an idea. So that then brings us into what I call PD, which is participatory design. Now, this is probably something anyone that's done front-end development or UX work will probably be familiar with in different phases or in different stage, or or under different guises. But this is a more theoretical and probably a more involved way of doing things. And the reason I've gone down this route is just looking at some of the existing stuff in there. If you, I don't know if any of you have, if you interact with academics quite a bit, you will notice that their UX is probably not one of their strongest points. And so we looking at some of the existing work that have been done previously, they've done some fantastic work. They've got some amazing, models that can actually detect various forms of bullying. But actually, the interface is not appealing. So subsequently, nobody's ever going to use that. And part of the reason is because they've just sat in a room and developed this interface. So the whole idea behind this is to actually go out to engage with the stakeholder. And by stakeholders, we're talking about young people, students that actually have a lot of experience with either, bullying or using social media. It's parents, it's, even law enforcement, had to get some law enforcement, cybercrime officers involved. And, so getting, casting your network to find all different types of people that would have a stake in this app and getting them together. And that creates some interesting discussion. So for example, typically all the parents said, yes, when you're designing this app, anytime my child gets an offensive message or is being bullied, I want you to send me a copy of that message. I want to be notified immediately. And the young people there, they were like, no, if you put that into the app, there's no way I'm ever going to use that, because why would I want my mom or my dad to see everything that somebody's sending to me? So you now get all this contrasting view, and it's a more holistic way of doing things. So of course, in this instance, we decided to go with what the young people wanted, because primarily this is an app designed for them to be able to use. So yeah, so that's part of the process, and this was primarily just to design the interface. And now looking into deep learning, if you've ever had, I don't know, even a small interest in artificial intelligence, you would have come across this term, deep learning. And I suppose AI is fashionable now, so you pretty much come across it very often. Now, deep learning is actually not new. It's been around, like, I probably say since the late 80s. And it's really based around, creating an AI model called neural networks, just based on the way the human brain works. Now, then, because of the amount of, mathematical competition that was going on then, there was so much calculation that this deep learning models need to do. It was just very expensive then in the 80s and 90s to be able to develop really, really effective network. You need to make very big network to be able to do that. And it was just very, very cost prohibitive. So, it kind of faded away. But more recently, because of, it's so much cheaper to create computers now, it's, then GPUs, graphic processing unit, was a big step in making deep learning more viable. And, your GPU is essentially your graphics card on your computer. So, and while they were designed, for things like computer games, what they were actually doing in the background of those computer games is doing a lot of maths. So some very clever people thought, why don't we just try and use this GPUs to do some of this calculation? And that was how, deep learning kind of got a second lease on life and became really, really popular now. And, we've been able to actually push what is possible in artificial intelligence. Now, I've got a tiny little graph in there at the bottom of that slide, and that's just giving you an idea. So your traditional, machine learning algorithms, you can keep pushing in data into it. The more data you give them, the more they learn, and they keep improving and improving. But up to a point, they kind of plateau out because they just can't learn anymore. It's just learn what it can learn. So your performance start degrading or not improving. You might even, stop learning and start de-learning. Whereas with deep learning models, they can keep learning. And part of that also because of the architecture. So just like human-based learn. So you learn to forget things, which is actually crucial to the way you learn. So it's very important for you to be able to forget certain things. So your brain decides, oh no, this details is not as important as that detail. So for example, you might remember the address of where you live 10 or 15 years ago, but you might not remember the color of your living room because in the general scheme of things, that's no longer important. But the address might still be important. The postcode might still be important because you might be using it in forms. So that's kind of how this neural network and deep learning works. So they learn from a lot and then decide what to forget and just keep the bits that contribute to the additional knowledge. Anyway, I can probably talk for, I don't know, a whole day on that. So why did I get into cyberbullying, into researching cyberbullying? Now, when I started my research back in 2013, I'm actually one of the people that just doesn't, I don't see the big deal in cyberbullying. You know, growing up, I guess that's probably a factor of my age and background. But, you know, growing up, bullying was kind of, you just feel like physical bullying was part of life. You just get through it, you know, find a way to, you know, it's kind of like a prison yard, that find a way to fight and beat, you know, the biggest lad or the people bullying you, and then just save yourself and get out of it. So I was like, well, that's not a big deal. So when I started my research, I was actually more interested. I was looking to do research in what we call recommender engines, so recommender system. And you know, this is something we interact with every day. You know, Netflix. Every time you go into a Netflix homepage, there's a recommender engine in effect that's trying to work out what you may want to see. So that's what my initial interest was. But along the course of that research, I read about a few young people that have been severely affected by this, and some of them actually tragically took their own life, and which kind of took me off on a tangent that got me onto this point, that got me interested in cyberbullying. Hopefully somebody will tell me if I'm where my time, if I'm going now, if I'm spending too much time anyway. But anyway, I got into that, and that's how I decided, you know, from just looking at the existing research and how much this can affect some of these young people, because bear in mind that a lot of these young people grew up with the internet. So this is their way of life. This is all they know. They've always had the internet. They're always used to it. They've always had to interact with people online. So the effect on them is quite significant. It's very, very, it's quite a big deal for them. And because of that, I think, you know, it's now a big deal for everybody, because, you know, as parents, you know, it's something that you may have to deal with. And just to put it in context, as part of this, I was interviewing young people just here in Birmingham. And within, I think, maybe I've done 12 or 13 interviews. That's just, and within that, I've spoken to a young person whose close friend committed suicide over cyberbullying. Two that have actually had to be hospitalized because of the severe trauma they went through. And another one that she and her friend actually went to attack the person bullying them and put them in coma. So that's like 4 very, very severe, you know, one fatality in just 12 interviews right here in Birmingham. So that's quite scary. So it's quite a lot more prevalent than you would think, and hence why I'm deeply invested in this. So in talking about the challenges, I'll probably try and dive a little bit more deeper into the technical issues, you know, the technicality of this. So one of the biggest initial problems I faced was around 2018. This was probably after the Cambridge analytical issue with Facebook, you know, allowing this company to kind of harvest people's data off their platform. And, you know, Facebook response to that was to just pretty much lock down their APIs. And since Facebook on Instagram, that was the same thing that happened. And that was like I probably spent a month just staring at the wall, not sure what to do next, because primarily I started out designing the app to work with Facebook and Instagram, because those were the key, you know, a lot of the young people that I spoke to, those were the media they were using, social media they were using, Instagram particularly. So it was designed around that. So when that happened, that was quite, you know, the app could not work in the way I needed it to work. So I had to maybe move a little bit sideways, and that's why I looked into Twitter, which thankfully was still open and was allowed, and the API was not locked down. So I said, okay, I might have to use Twitter instead. And then that's why, you know, the app in its current version works with Twitter. So, you know, that was one of the key challenge in there. Another probably technical one was, you know, further down is with Google Play. I'm not an Android developer. I learned Android just to be able to do this. I actually tried hiring a few developers to do some of the work for me, but I wasn't really too happy with the output, so I had to learn Android and Java, and learn how to develop an Android app off the back of that. And when it was time to submit the app, it was just Google's policy, app policy, and permission. It was just a minefield, and I just kept going around the circle, just trying to get this approved. And fortunately, they don't actually tell you which of the permission. But basically, if you wanted to be able to manage text messages, so in which case I wanted to be able to, so I can delete offensive text messages and block phone contact. Google wants, well, you have to be the messaging, a messaging app. So eventually I had to remove that, disable that functionality in the app just to get it approved, because I was on a schedule with my PhD, but I'm revisiting that, so it's something as part of the next steps, that I'll put back into the app. Yeah, working with school, I think Hollywood, there's a saying in Hollywood that never work with children and animals, and I think the same probably goes for research, which is why there's very few work of this sort, because it's just extremely difficult doing research with young people. Not because they're young, but there's just a whole lot of ethical issues that you need to be aware of, and particularly on such a sensitive topic such as cyberbullying. So you could be interviewing or talking to a young person that previously been bullied or had very severe, very bad experience, and you could end up re-traumatizing them by dredging up some of these memories which they might have suppressed. So that there was some significant concern, from the university around that. So even when I was doing the interview, I actually had to have like a guidance counselor. In some cases, I had a psychologist to accompany me just to make sure that we avoid those issues. And then learning, in order to train, and this is the way all AI works, in order to be able to train an AI model, you need to find examples. And in this case, this were example of bullying, offensive messages. So I had to, currently the model is trained on, I think, 63,000 tweets, offensive tweets. And yeah, I'm not really, for somebody that spent a lot of time researching social media, I'm not actually that much of a social media person, but let's just say the stuff on Twitter, especially the offensive stuff on Twitter, is just, yeah. I actually had, because I had to hire people to do some of the labeling. So basically they need to read a tweet and then decide, is this offensive? What type of bullying is it? Is it just using profanity and such and such? And a few times, some of these people actually quit on me, and they were just like, yeah, I can't read this anymore. It's just vile stuff. So yeah, so there was a lot of issues around that. What's next? So I think BullStop, the app's been running for a couple of months now, which is good, and I've been getting some engagement from people. And part of that's actually it's influencing or shaping what the next step should be. I think definitely a lot of people still would like things like Instagram and Facebook, because there's such big platform for various people. So I've opened up conversation with them to see what's possible. I mean, I might not be able to get everything that I need them to do, but I think that there's some movement in that regard with regards to maybe getting access to platform, just being able to do certain things. YouTube, for some reason, actually seems to be quite popular. I've got a lot of people talking about integrating YouTube and TikTok and things like that into the app. So those are part of things I need to look at. Scaling it out, it's actually quite expensive to run a cloud platform, despite what any cloud platform provider will tell you. So, and my PhD, my research is actually self-funded. So I need to come up with a structure around the app on how to pay, how that pays for itself, or maybe get some funding from somewhere to be able to push that to the next level. So yeah, a lot of plans and stuff to do, but I think yeah, the future looks good for BullStop. I hope. Mike, have I used up all my time? Can we take questions?
Well, if that's the end of your talk, we can start asking questions. Yes.
Okay, cool.
I even put a banner thing up so that people know that now you can ask questions. And we actually have some in the crowd. So one we have from Stefan Gudov. Have you been able to distribute this outside of the Play Store, i.e. alternative app stores, as an APK, etc.?
Not yet, but it can. I mean, it's available as an APK. I just didn't share it. Primarily, it was more of an issue of perception. And so, if you're asking people to authorize an app to be able to review their Twitter and Facebook and the likes, we just felt that if they have to download an APK, people might be a bit not so sure about that. Whereas if it's on the App Store, it makes people feel a little bit, gives them a better feeling. So yeah, but it is available as an APK, and yes, I'll probably think of pushing it out to some of the other, like the Samsung or even the Amazon. I actually thought about moving to Amazon at one point when I was having so much trouble with Google. So yeah, but yeah, it's available as an APK as well. I could, if people want, I could share that. But yeah.
Okay. We have another one from Steve Love going, do you have links for any publications? Would you like to point out where people can find said publications?
Yeah, so there is some earlier work I've done around the background cyberbullying and approaches. I can think there's a link on my LinkedIn page to that, but I can share that in the comments or in the channel, a link to that. I've got maybe a few other papers that maybe in the process of being published in the next few months or so. But COVID fortunately affected so many things. So the whole bunch of papers that was written and submitted earlier on this year, all of those conferences have been moved to next year, which then means those papers are kind of in limbo. But I suppose I can share some preprint versions of them. But yeah, I would, I guess when other people are talking, I'll try to put those in the comment section.
That would be wonderful. He also often offered to volunteer somebody for reading your thesis, just as an FYI. And we have another question here, which I apologize if I'm going to butcher the name, from Haida Al Delphi, which is, I am just wondering whether you're considering keeping it platform agnostic and maybe licensing technology to social media providers.
To me, that would be the ultimate aim, to be honest, because the whole idea initially was to actually have it available as an API, and then you can do whatever you want with it. And I think that will still be the way to go, obviously, because and which is why I just went with Android. I just needed a means to deliver this out to the market and to people and to do some testing. So yes, all the functionality are implemented via APIs. The app is just talking to a whole bunch of API. So that's absolutely correct. That will be part of the plan. Will be to also make it available as an API, because you can then do all sorts with it, even bring it into the workplace, because you could use it. In terms of making it available to the social media platform, yes, but a lot of them are also doing works in that regard. But like I said, part of I think a big problem, and it would be nice to actually collaborate with them, because they've clearly got a lot more resources than I can do. So if the current model is based on, say, 62,000 tweets, imagine if, I'm able to get 1 million tweets, that would just improve, the accuracy of the model and what it can do. And with people like Facebook or Twitter, that is possible. With spoiled me getting, the time and money to be able to label 1 million tweet or, post on Instagram, or it's just impossible. So yes, it will be available as an API. Definitely, that's part of the next step. Like I said, I think the discussion with the university is to maybe spin out a startup around this, and I guess the API will be one of the products from that startup. So yeah.
Okay. It's interesting, and it's actually really, really nice to see that a project which is like this actually having wings to it and the opportunity to grow. So, thank you very much, Semiu. Have you got any closing remarks you'd like to share before you start going to hunt for your papers?
I think it probably just, and I don't want to sound preachy, but it's just around cyberbullying. Like I said, I was very, very skeptical before I got into this, into doing this research. But it is serious. It's not something that's just a fad. It's really, really serious, and it's something that we need to take a lot more serious. And I think, thankfully, we're having a talk from mine later on. I mean, they will tell you that mental health is quite a serious thing, and this affects mental health of young people. You've seen young people as young as 9, 7, 8, not wanting to go back to school just because of cyberbullying. So yeah, it's really, really, and the more we can get people to talk about this, or to be willing to talk with their children, or even school teachers about this, because the better. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. And you're right, it is a serious subject. So, thank you very much. I will drop you out now so we can start the next talk. So, next up, we have a subject that is pretty close to my heart, which is building web apps. Anybody who knows me is I have made a lot of complaints and screaming at the internet for not building progressive web apps correctly and hybrid apps in their nature. So I am going to be inviting Sani up now, so he's ready for his talk. How are you doing, Sani?
I'm all right. Hello.
There we go. Have you need to share your screen, good sir, otherwise nobody's going to be learning any of your wonderful stuff.
Yes, I have that.
Perfect. I believe you are a contractor or a web agency around building cross-platform applications.
Yeah, whatever fits the boat. I'm just a consultant. I build mostly web and mobile applications, and among other things, yes.
Okay, fantastic. So, without further ado, I'm going to add your slides and boot me off the internet so you can share.
All right. Hello, everybody. My name is Sani.
Pardon? Shall we retry that?
Oh.
Got to have no idea what's happening here. The internet was just going, squirrely noises.
Okay. I don't know what happened. I kind of lost you there for a second.
Oh, no, I had removed myself so you could start talking, because otherwise people would be annoyed at my booming big voice of bigness. It's like big bushy beard.
Okay.
And here we go. Let's try that again. And I'm once again going to boot myself so you can start.
All right. Apologies for that. Mike just broke the internet, so hopefully we can fix it, because that's literally what my talk is about. Hi, everybody. My name is Sani Yusuf. The title of the talk is Web is the New Native. Can everybody hear? There's no problems like in the chat room, like just thumbs up, like, or just say avatar if everything is all good. Like, just making sure. Okay, I think we're good to go. So the title of the talk is "Web is the New Native." So let me tell you a little bit about my boring self. My name is Sani Yusuf. Sani Yusuf with a wonderful smile. Yes. So I'm a Google developer expert in Angular and all things web. I'm also an author, so sometimes I get some inspiration and I wake up in the middle of the night and I write something, and people are crazy enough to read it and find it nice, amazing. Who'd have known? And I'm also an Angular trainer, so sometimes I travel around the world, different cities, and I go and I train amazing people and I teach them how to use Angular. Don't tell them I don't know what I'm doing, but they seem to believe I really know what I'm doing, and it has worked wonders. So trust me, you should write a book about that. And if you know me or you've heard me talk, you know that this was coming, because I am what you call an Avatar enthusiast. The movie Avatar, James Cameron, 2008, I am absolutely in love with that movie. Like I went to Disneyland and we were queuing up for 2 hours, and I literally became a tour guide for all the people queuing up. Like they were pointing out things. What's that? To the degree that I was given a card. Like, if you really want to work here, yeah, why don't you come do this? So I really love Avatar. And it's easy to find me online. You can find me everywhere at Sani Yusuf, literally just my name. So let's talk about the web. The web. What is the web? So let's talk about the web. The web before today. Like, when I say the web today, people have different notions and all of that. But like, before today, this was what the web was like. It was just mainly focused on content. You went to www.crazywebsite.com, you saw a white blank screen and then text, and that was it. This is actually the World Wide Web, like the main, I guess, paper for the WWW, Tim Berners-Lee. Who knew that, creating the web would make someone a billionaire? But yes, there was no interactivity in the web. The web was very boring. It was like a bunch of text, and that's it, and links, right? That's it. And browser support was an absolute whirlwind. Like, it was not a good place. You had all these Netscape, crazy browser and everything. I still remember when Chrome was launched, actually, but browser support was terrible. Really, 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 really terrible. And like, that same version of the web actually still works today. So on the left-hand side here, you can see a picture for Craigslist. Craigslist.com, in case you don't know, is a website where I think you can literally hire just like a classified ads website. Like, it became very popular because like you could literally, I don't know, go rent serial killers or something like that. There, it's crazy website, and it hasn't really changed since like 19 in the 90s when the web was pretty fresh. Guess what? These guys, I think, it's still not clear because their earnings are not public, but I think the rumor is that they turn over close to $1 billion every other like year. That's how amazing it is. It's like literally like a huge website. The founders are billionaires. I can see someone in the chat saying they feel very old because they recognize this. And on the right hand side, you have echo.com. Now, why did I put echo.com? I put echo.com because it hasn't changed. And this was one of the websites where a young Nigerian, myself, would spend all his money going to the cyber cafes to learn how to code in HTML. And echo.com was one of those websites that had free HTML tutorials, and it's still available to today. If there's a way I could literally donate back to this website, if you know anyone that literally is attached to it, I'll be more than happy. And it still works, So, and then, if you wanted to do anything interactive or anything serious, the desktop was the only way. Does anybody remember this? Encarta Encyclopedia. I'm pretty sure a lot of people, remember Encarta Encyclopedia, because I think when I was a kid, this was like, it was cool to have Encarta on your computer, because you'd like go and be like, I read it in Encarta. Encarta was the Wikipedia back in the days. Like, it was an honor, it was a pleasure. And I know most of you didn't pay for it. I am pretty sure most of you didn't pay for it. Very few people paid for Encarta, but I don't think they cared. And then this one called Dreamweaver. This was a site. I remember my friend got given an assignment to create a website, and what he did, his teacher at the time didn't know about Dreamweaver, and he went to the Yahoo and copied the source code and just pasted it in Dreamweaver and just did a little bit of shimmy, and then he got like an A1. Terrible guy. But yeah, Dreamweaver. Fun fact: if you know a guy called Adi Osmani who works for Google and is a wonderful advocate for the web, he was part of the initial team that developed Dreamweaver. Yes. So this was the only alternative if you wanted to do like anything interactive. You couldn't do that on the web, right? And then you needed these guys. First of all, you needed to have like tons and tons of floppy drives, you know. I can see people in the chat having horrific flashback. And then you needed to do all of these. And there was a time when the CD came up. It's crazy because the icon for save today is the floppy disk drive, right? That's the icon for save. But it's so crazy that they're thinking about changing the icon for save today because a lot of the Gen Z, the new like people born 2000 upward, don't actually relate to the save icon because they've never seen a floppy drive in their life. I think the day I read that, I realized, oh my God, I need to start taking my life serious. It's time to start playing Sani. We are officially old. And remember these guys, you know, insert disk 1, time to insert disk 2, time to insert disk 3. It was a skill being able to install software. I remember when I lived in Nigeria, I got paid money to come to people's house and install software for them. And that was a skill. That was a skill, you know? And then we had a very messy browser standard. First, we had, you know, DHTML, you know, and then which was dynamic HTML that bought the marquee. And then we had XHTML, which was basically what socialism would look like if it was HTML would look like under socialism. Everything was very strict, you know. You had to close all the tabs, all the tags and everything. And then you had a UHTML and a me HTML and everyone HTML. You could open 5 different websites and they were all running on different versions of HTML, which was just crazy because then, you know, validators it was just a crazy time. I don't know who thought it was a great idea to do that. And we can agree that was a big mistake. It was not the smartest decision to do that. You know, so what the hell happened? What the hell happened? Let's look at what the hell happened. Well, broadband happened. You know, we went from cavemen waiting for with the dial-up to like broadband. I remember I was the only kid, right, in my high school that had a broadband connection. That was really cool. I was popular. You know, the pretty young girls in my class could watch YouTube without it buffering for too long, and I was like the cool kid because I had a broadband connection. You know, the little stuff you used to put, the modems you used to put on your laptop with the aerial. I had one of those. So I became very popular, and I had I had to pay for it because my father wouldn't pay for my broadband connection because it's so expensive in Nigeria. You know, it was around in today's, I was paying like maybe $200, £200 a month for 100 hours. So what did I do? I actually used to download illegal music from Netscape and people paid me to put it on their phones. Yes, I know. I was a pirate and proud. Hey, I had to do what I had to do, right? But that was it. And I had, I think, a 64 kilobyte connection or 128 kilobyte connection. And then, you know, so broadband happened. You had a really fast internet, and then, you know, bigger content everywhere. All this nice stuff was coming, right? And you had different input options. We went from just a mouse and a keyboard to like touch screens, to joysticks, to webcams, to cameras, to scanners, to microphones, and the track ball on the bottom right-hand corner. Whoever thought that was a great idea, I still don't know why, you know, that kind of thing. And remember, I was a young kid in Nigeria, just literally around 11, 10, 12 in Nigeria, a place where, first of all, you know, not a lot of people even understood like computers. It was probably like, if you don't know about Nigeria, the most populous country in Africa. So it was pretty ahead of all the other African countries, but in comparison to the UK and the US, we were way behind. So it was a struggle to tell my dad, like, hey, I needed to do this thing to go and learn. People just didn't really understand. And every day I would go to the cyber cafe and pay loads of money there. And I would see what my like peers in America and in England were doing with the internet, and I was just amazed. I wanted to do that, you know, but I just didn't have the right things. But I didn't let that stop me. So that's kind of how I was learning. And then I think another thing that really changed the internet was Ajax. You know, Ajax came, so you had all this, like before the internet, the only way you could fetch information is by sending the web page to the browser and back via post and get requests. But when Ajax came, you could do those post and get requests for like without refreshing the web page. So you could just do them asynchronously, right? I think the most important thing that happened with regards to the web is this particular event. This was the single most important event. So there's this genius of a guy, right? I don't really know his name. I think his name is Steve Jobs. So this guy goes and holds this phone and goes, hey, this is called the iPhone, and you are my iSheep, and you are going to pay your iDollars and your iPounds to my iCompany. And people thought it was a great idea. So he invented this thing called the iPhone. And I think this really, really, really was the single most important thing for the web. Because what happened now, what that meant is everything, we started using the mobile, right? So we started like from accessing the internet or the web via our computers only. We started going from our mobile devices, you know, so that really changed the way we started doing things. And then new device features came up, right? So you now had accelerometers to see where you are in the 3D space. You had near field communication come up later on. You know, you had camera access. Now you could really just take pictures and do things. You know, you had GPS and stuff like that, you know? And then native is born again, right? Basically, because you have a web page, you needed to go and learn the most beautiful programming language in the history of programming languages, which is Objective-C, to create an app for iPhone or Java for Android, right? And this means you had to rewrite your app all over again, learn completely new skills, buy new tools, you know, Xcode and all of that. You had to think about different experiences. You had to read. There was no reuse across all these platforms. It was not a nice thing. I think by 2011, you had Android, iPhone, Windows Phone. There was talk about Ubuntu OS, Firefox OS. Everybody wanted to create a mobile ecosystem, and it was not very fun to support these applications, right? But what happened? What about the web? Why didn't they make the web? Remember, the smartest people in Apple said we didn't want to support the web at the time. Steve Jobs actually always bet on the web, but it was just too soon. That promise was too soon. The thing is, the web really sucked, right? It was single-threaded. There was no data persistence. You had minimum interactivity, and the cross-browser shenanigans would kill any sane person. It would make your therapist need a therapist. Like, that's how terrible the web was. I remember when Facebook rewrote all their mobile applications with Cordova, thinking, hey, we wanted to be progressive and everything. And it took them like a couple of months. They rewrote everything back in native, right? So solutions, you know, this was the first solution at the time. You know, you had Flash and Shockwave, a great tool by Adobe, where you could get rich user experiences, and it allowed you on the web to use cross-browser features. They even made Adobe for mobile. Does anybody remember this website, minuteclip.com? Right? Anyone? I want to see the chat if people remember minuteclip.com. So if you don't know what minuteclip.com is, Minuteclip was this amazing web page where you could go and like play free video games. I think it's still live till today. You could go to minuteclip.com. And this was where I spent most of my time, just trying to learn how to play games. And the only way you could do that was Shockwave. And the funny thing is, this was the one problem with that. You had to install Flash, right? And then you had to have Shockwave. And then you must make sure that the current version of Flash you had was supported by the program you're trying to run. And this version of Shockwave you had was supported by the version of Flash. And if you lived in my part of the world, in Nigeria, you know, in a non-broadband environment, just forget about it. Forget about it, because like it just didn't make sense. Because the time I remember, I would go to the cyber cafe and I would buy like an hour, and it would take me like 60, maybe like 45 minutes to install Shockwave. And then if in Nigeria the power supply is not amazing, so if the power supply went on, I had to like reinstall everything from scratch again. It was just crazy. So while all this long stuff. Obviously, it was because the web really sucked. As simple as that, right? Well, maybe not anymore. The web does not have to suck. So let's see some new APIs today that the web is introducing that we can use to create really rich experiences. The first one is the web speech API. One of the less, like, maybe not so popular web API, is not very common. It allows you for speech detection, and also allows you to recognize speech. So you can speak in and the speech will be recognized and also and detected, and you can use that to do whatever you wanted to do. So let's go ahead and see a quick demo about this, right? So I'm just gonna refresh this page. This is and what I'm gonna do, what you'll see in this page is it's a demo where I just need to click the screen and then I can see any of the colors, and then the background color will change because the program will recognize my speech. So I'm just gonna click here and I'm gonna say red. As you can see, it says here, I'm gonna say red. Red. Salmon. Salmon. Tomato. I didn't even know tomato was a color. Yellow. Black. Brown. Well, I'm having way too much fun, actually. I think this is part of the point. But this is a wonderful speech API that is built so the browser is available in the browser that you can use today in most major browsers. And this is really amazing because you can recognize speech. You can see how it was able to recognize my speech and then change the CSS background color. That's really, 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 really amazing, I think. Another one we're going to talk about is service workers and push notification. So today we have something called the service worker that allows you for offline support, right? And you can get mobile app-like experiences, so you can even install your apps. So Twitter.com is actually currently a progressive web app, which means it has a service worker and it also has push notifications. So you can use you can go, if you go to Twitter.com, right, you can actually on your mobile device install that device. You can actually do that also on your Chrome browser. So right now I have Twitter.com installed as a progressive web application on my Mac, but I have an icon on my desktop on my Mac that I can double click that will open up that particular app. It's really, really amazing. App-like experiences. It has data persistence or limited data storage, push notifications as well, right? Now, some of the apps I talked about, Twitter is one of them. It's a progressive web app. You can go test that out. But also Starbucks have a progressive web application as well. So it's already happening now, and many, many, many more, right? Now, other APIs to watch out for. I'm a big fan of the web VR and web AR efforts that's being happen. That is being done. People like Samsung are doing amazing work there. Google is doing really amazing work. Safari, not quite sure. Apple, what the hell are you doing? Web payments is another one that will unify payment structures across. I'm really waiting for that one as well. Web share is another one that unify the sharing experience. Web Bluetooth. My friend Kenneth Rhodes from Intel has been working on this for years. He's really, really amazing. As my talk comes to an end, the web is for all of us, right? It's not just for me. It's not for you. We all wait to each other to create a better web experience. We've come from the days where one person, Microsoft owned what it meant to have like web standards, and then we decentralized that to like everyone, and now we have different engines that are competing, Chromium and so on and so forth. So the web is for all of us. So why don't we come together and build a unified web? So it's up to me, up to you, right? Now, to find me online, like I said, it's very easy. You can find me at saniyusuf.com, or you can just Google my name, Sani Yusuf, and that should give you all the possible links that you can find. If you find anybody that looks this amazing using anything Sani Yusuf, let me know so I can sue them. Well, without further ado, this is where my talk ends, and I will welcome back Mike and take all the questions.
Oh, that's dangerous inviting me back. Right. As I seem to have already broken the internet once, let's see if we can survive the rest of this without me doing it again. I think there's proof that progressive web apps have a place to exist in the universe because they can survive people like me. Right. Let's remove that. Oh, we have questions. And we'll put the banner up so that it looks all pretty and stuff. There we go. Comments. So, from our very own Stuart Langridge, there is a large amount of APIs which add new capabilities to the web. Take Web Bluetooth as an example, but iOS doesn't and won't support them. How do we progress given that? Considering they do take up a large amount of the mobile market, it is a very valid point.
That's very true. I think Apple, it's a conundrum, right? Apple is like, I don't know what Apple is doing. I do know, I have spoken to people that work on the Apple like browser stuff. I don't think they're just, I don't know what it is. I'll be honest, I don't know. I refuse to believe that Apple is just this evil company that has no plans. I don't know. There's a lot of conspiracy theories. There's the fact that maybe, the better web standards, Apple may not make as much money from the App Store. There is that whole thought process. But one thing Apple would be crazy to think if they're too big to fail. BlackBerry learned the hard way. I think if the web is moving forward and people start building for the web and Apple then becomes you're holding us back, you will see people stop using that for that reason. We saw that happen with Microsoft, right? Where fundamentally people stopped using Internet Explorer. Even though the new Edge came, it was still hard because people just had that weird, they just look the same because, hey, in Microsoft, they were thought they were too big to fail. And then, hey, Chrome just came and swept everything away. So it can be difficult. I would say that the whole point of progressive web apps is that you support what it's progressive, right? So it doesn't have to work the same way, but it's a progressive enhancement. So your app would still work normally, but on the better browsers or the browsers with better support, then it just enhances itself and does more stuff. So I would still say we should build for the web like that.
Okie dokie. Yeah, I personally feel that at some point, Apple's just going to have to bow down to peer pressure and behave.
Yep.
It may be a court judgment level of peer pressure, but they will bow down eventually. Okay, we have another question. Oh, once again from Haida. What's your thoughts on languages frameworks coming in to replace JavaScript in the browser with WebAssembly? Think Blazor as an example.
I don't see that as a replacement. I mean, JavaScript is what is given the ability for use to WebAssembly, right? The whole point is I don't think we're going to see everyone just suddenly building the entirety of their web pages with, WebAssembly. I think it will be what WebAssembly would do is the more powerful stuff, right? So if you want to build, you want to have access on the lower layer. Now, is it the right way? I still don't know. I would prefer to live in a world where the bindings from the web APIs themselves were so performant and so lovely that you didn't even need something like WebAssembly. But I don't think that's feasible within a finite amount of time, where that's what makes WebAssembly very, very amazing. So I think I don't see the thing where now as a web developer, you need to know WebAssembly. I don't think that's the case. I don't think a lot of people will be writing WebAssembly. I think a lot of people will be writing things like, C, C++, and then compile down to a WebAssembly module and just require that. Most people would not literally be writing WebAssembly. That's just my opinion. So Blazor, all these things will be amazing. People would just be using frameworks on top of that, compile it down, require that module in JavaScript, and then, do that. Yeah, that's what I see happening.
Yeah, I agree. Unless you're going to be doing something really crazy that requires some hardware acceleration, it's probably going to be more effort than it's worth.
Yes.
At least for a long time.
Yes.
Okay, and I have a question because this is one I love asking people. What's the oddest thing you've done with a service worker?
Good question.
Because I've seen people do some crazy stuff with them. A guy called Phil Nash once tried making a game using ground notifications using service worker to do most of the poll work. So, yeah.
Generally, I've stayed very kosher with service workers because service workers are one of those things where, like it's very nice, but it's like they hand you these very powerful, like the key to a Ferrari. It looks good, but remember it's a Ferrari. Like you gotta be careful driving this thing. So I've relatively haven't done anything crazy with service work or anything odd. I've paid attention with it. Yeah.
Okay. And one last question, because I'm a complete internet muppet and I completely forgot. Another one from Stefan Kudev. Loved your talk. Do you think PWAs on mobile devices will ever be a rival to native apps in terms of transitions, rendering, better access to device resources?
For the near future, no. For the long term, probably. But then I have a thing where I don't like to predict the future of the web. If you told me in 2005 that a time will come when I'll be able to have, like, you know, you can't envision what we don't even know. Like you tell me about mobile apps, it will be very hard to envision. I do think by the time, like, things like WebAssembly will make it possible, right? I think the performance from a WebAssembly application and like a normal standard application, the differences in performance will be like micro optimization. You're basically working on the same, like you're basically working on the same eggshells. It's like the difference is like Usain Bolt and like whoever came after Usain Bolt. Usain Bolt is still first, but the second person is still pretty quick, right? Like, they're by no means slow type of thing. So I think over time, yes, was left to see. I wouldn't be able to predict that far into the future. But I think in terms of transition rendering here, we're already at a place where with WebAssembly and like proper WebGL stuff, you could get pretty much the same level of like craziness. Yeah, at this point in time.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I think we've reached the point where your average person can't tell the difference between a native and a web-built app when it comes to normal interaction. OpenGL and Insane Graphics, yes.
Mm.
Everything else,
yeah.
Unless you have network tab open, doubt it.
Yes. I think even in the near future, there'll still be, like, even 20, 15 years from now, there'll still be, right? Microsoft is still gonna be making MicrosoftWord.com as a native app, even though they have a web application version of it. It's just because of, first of all, consumer behavior and other things, like Microsoft Word now, as it is today, could actually pretty much be a completely web application, like for the most part, but still, we're still gonna have a native app. It's the same thing I say with mobile applications. The App Store is gonna be here for a long time, regardless. It's just that transition is gonna take a while.
Yeah. Do you have any more remarks or sharing that you want to quickly drop to our wonderful audience right now?
Nothing specific really. I think it's been a wonderful, amazing thing in the future meetup. I was hoping that this could happen in real life, me up there in Birmingham, but here we are. We wouldn't let it feed us. Yes.
At some point, the world will return to a new normal, which allows us to have miniature events again. So when that happens, you'll have to come back up and share something new that you've learned.
All right. I'll be more than happy to. Thank you very much.
No worries. Let's crack on with the day.
Right.
So, next up, unfortunately, our next speaker is not going to be around to introduce herself and give a talk. So, without further ado, I'm going to be introducing Hannah to introduce Helen.
Hi!
Are you okay, Chuckles?
I'm okay. I'm just like, there's a little bit of a delay. I've got two laptops in front of me. So I'm currently waving on one laptop and talking on the other. So it's really off-putting.
Turn the one with the YouTube away from you. Trust me, it'll help a lot.
Everyone's talking on that one. And like, I want to be a part of the conversation. So I'm like, oh, this is great. Yeah. Hello, everybody.
So, would you like to introduce Helen and why she's going to be giving a video talk?
Yes, I would. Okay. So, hi, everyone. First of all, thank you so much for joining. This is super weird, doing it all virtual. It's great. But as I've said a million times, I really want to get back to doing it face to face, so I can hug you all and drink lots of beer with everyone. But yeah, so those of you who have actually been to the real life fusions before will know that in probably like the last 12 months, 18 months, we've had a couple of people from Mind Birmingham. So the first talk we had was Mike Jeffries. So we've kind of had like a real focus on mental health for each of our events. And we're trying to kind of keep the conversation going, I suppose, with that. Helen Wadley, the CEO of Mind, I have been trying to get this woman for so long, and she's super duper busy, as you can imagine. She works so hard. So she couldn't actually do a live talk tonight. So she's done this amazing pre-recorded talk for us, which is just brilliant. So I hope you all take something home from it. How was the last 6 months? This whole working from home thing has been so weird. I don't know how people have found it. I don't think I know one person that's found it particularly easy. I know I haven't. Kind of, missing that sort of human interaction. I've kind of really felt that myself. So what Helen's done is her talk is basically practical tips to, I suppose, like for good mental health whilst working from home. So I know things are easing and things are a bit up and down, but I think a lot of people are still working from home. So hopefully there's some tips in there that you can really use as well. I think it's really good that we've actually got this today, Mike. Realising it's World Suicide Prevention Day. So keeping this topic of mental health and the importance of good mental health and talking going is really important. So I'm going to introduce Helen and stop talking now. This is Helen Wadley. If anyone has any questions, please drop them in the comments and we'll share those with Helen or some of the team at Birmingham Mind, and we can get those questions answered, and we'll pop them on our Twitter feed either tomorrow or it'll be Monday next week. So over to Helen from Mind.
And now for me to do some tech wizardry without breaking the internet again. Let's see if this works. If people don't hear audio, please say.
Hi, my name's Helen Wadley. I'm the Chief Executive of Birmingham Mind, and today I'm going to talk to you about some practical tips on how to stay well whilst we're all working from home during these strange times. So really just to sort of focus a bit on, well, what do we actually mean by mental health? Because I think people have got some real misconceptions about that you're either ill or you're not ill. And with mental health, it is very much a continuum. So, we have in our daily lives, we have times when things aren't working so well for us. So, it is that everyone has ups and downs. If we suffer a loss, then we're likely to get very depressed about it. We might get quite angry about it. In the middle of a pandemic, it is normal, really, for everyone's anxiety to increase and for people's mental health to sort of be a bit less robust than normal. So it is this continuum, and it's a continuum that everyone really goes up and down. And even if you are have been diagnosed as, say, with schizophrenia, one of the more serious mental health conditions, you can still actually be quite mentally well at times. So it's not an all or nothing. And it is also about, a bit like our physical health, it is part of us, it's part of the human condition. So working from home, and if my cat comes and interrupts me, then I'm sorry. I think all of you will know the difficulties about working from home when you've got pets and children as well. But since March this year, we've all had to embrace working from home. And there are some really good things about it. So you can get the washing in when it's wet. You can have a quick cuddle with your pet. Or you can spend a bit more time with your children and be there to put them to bed at night. So there's some really good things about working from home, but actually there's also some difficulties about working from home as well that we can all experience. So I'm just going to run through some of those practical tips about how we can make sure that we stay as well as we can whilst working from home. It's really important to still have that sort of demarcation between home and work, really. So it's about ensuring that we've got a space in the house, which is our workspace, or that it's a space which allows us to put all of our work away at the end of the day. But it is really important about, if you can, it's best to obviously be able to use a spare bedroom or whatever and turn that into an office, which you only open the door at the time that you clock on, and you close the door on your way out at the time you log off, and that you don't just allow those boundaries to get too blurred, really. If you're not able to be able to designate a space, a room for working, then it is really important that you find a way of being able to hide your work computer or your paperwork or whatever, that you put it away at the end of the day and that you take it out of the drawer or wherever you've put it the beginning of the next day, so that, again, it's that work, home, and being quite separate. And making sure that you've got everything with you that you need to have at home in order to be able to work properly. And that includes making sure that you've got your contacts list and you know how to be in contact with your manager and with your colleagues, and having all of the necessary information, really. One of the other things that you can really do to sort of help keep that home and work life from blurring too much is about changing into work clothes as you would normally. Even if it's just putting on a work top, and you might want to still be wearing your pajama bottoms or whatever, but actually clothes can help signify that something is changing. So it's important that if you are struggling from home, that you think about what can I do that would help me ensure that I know when I'm working and know when I'm at home and enjoying home. So have a think about whether you would want to still have an element of dressing for work. And it is really important to create a routine. So, for example, I'm working from home, but each morning I still go for a 10-minute walk. It's only 10 minutes because I'm physically disabled as well. But I always have gone for that 10-minute walk before getting in the car and driving to work. And so now I still go for that 10-minute walk. And then when I come back in, I make myself a cup of tea, I sit down, I log on, and that's my routine. And that walk helps to, again, set me up for it's time to work. And if it's too rainy, then I'll sometimes do sort of 10 minutes of yoga or something. So it's just that using exercise as a way of firstly energizing myself and getting myself a bit more motivated, but also saying, right, and now then there is work after this. What I'm really bad about doing is stopping the work. So I think it's really important that we find ways of making sure that we do that logging off. And if you live with someone else, you can get them to help you with that. Or again, make sure that you've got ways and means of being able to sort of separate that end of the day with your being back at home. Working from home, we sort of lose those sort of water cooler moments, really, don't we? The general chit chat about what happened in the soaps last night or what's in the news or whatever. And particularly with the pandemic that we're in as well, where it's sort of, there is so much that people might want to talk to each other about. So it's really important that there is that connection with colleagues, which is not just around the work and helping plan and helping coordinate the work that needs to be done, but also builds in a bit of fun as well. So some places do sort of social hours once a week, so they do a quiz or just a general get together. Just having teams conversations with each other can really help ensure that people feel that connection. And it really helps. I mean, Zoom, who would have loved to have had some shares in Zoom before the pandemic? It's gone from relative obscurity to now, you know, what you use both work and socially in order to stay connected with people. And face-to-face is always better, but actually, you know, virtually, you're still able to make eye contact with people. You're still able to have that bit of that deeper connection than you would on the phone. I think, you know, it can be difficult to reach out for support, and I think it's beholden on all of us to ask our colleagues if they're needing support, if we think they're struggling. But also it's beholden on us to reach out and say to our manager or colleagues, look, I'm struggling, and be explicit about what that struggle is, and what, you know, sort of being really clear about what it is you're struggling with and what might be useful for them to do. So I know, for example, with one of my colleagues, he was struggling a bit, so I agreed with him that at the end of each day we would have a phone call and a bit of a debrief, and then a conversation about what was going to happen the following day. So it's just that, making sure that people are able to reach out. In terms of, you know, sort of when to start being aware of the fact that your mental health is starting to deteriorate a bit, it's being aware of what those sort of early warning signs are, and they do vary from person to person. But some of the things that you might feel is irritable, very intolerant with people in circumstances that normally you would have a level of tolerance around. Your thoughts racing, not being able to switch off, not being able to enjoy things that you normally would. Really finding it difficult to sleep, difficult to get motivated, not able to really have much interest in what's going on. And those are sort of signs that it's sort of, okay, it's time to do something about, really. We, you know, sort of make sure that it's sort of, we put in a bit more effort to trying and looking after our mental health at that stage. So what you can do, both at that stage, but most importantly in a way now, even if you're not at that stage of your mental health being a bit of a worry, you know, doing the investment in our physical health, eating properly, exercise, etc., not only benefits our physical health, but it also benefits our mental health. And there is other things that we can do as well that will be preventative factors in helping us to stay well and keep well. So I'll go through some of those. And the first one really is that I mentioned already about that exercise, getting outside, you know, sort of, you know, I spoke about me going for a walk each morning. Now, it's not just about ensuring that I'm helping to create that routine between home and work. It is also about that there is scientific evidence which shows that half an hour of unfiltered daylight, so not wearing sunglasses, is really important for our physical and our mental well-being. And doing the exercise, you get all the endorphins, etc. So, you know, and it's much easier to be mindful as well when you're getting out and about. So I think it's sort of really important to find a way of having regular exercise, regular daily exercise, even if it's just a walk. Particularly at the moment with the pandemic, you know, sort of, I know I've been guilty of watching every news program going and scouring the internet and everything, trying to make sense of the world, really. I think if it's starting to, if people are, you know, if you're starting to feel more anxious, starting to feel that sort of knot in your stomach, starting to feel a bit as though you can't think of anything else, it's really important to set some limits on your social media and also on news channels. I'm really just saying, right, I will watch half an hour of news once a day, and that is it. And I will look at my Facebook feed for half an hour a day, or whatever social media platform you want to use. But actually you don't get drawn into doing it more and more and more, because it will just make your thoughts spiral much more. In terms of social media as well, I think it's important to only follow accounts and people that make you happy, that bring positivity into your life. And that is both your friends and your family, as well as sort of people that maybe are celebrities or that you don't know. There are some people's social media use which can make us feel inferior. So they've got a perfect life. Why is my life feeling a bit of a mess? There is some people's who social media is full of, oh no, this is the latest disaster that's hit me, or woe is me. Can people help? And that you feel drawn into. Do a bit of a cleanse of your social media platforms that you follow. Only follow the things which uplift you and are positive in your life. And if that means that all you do is follow cat accounts or dog accounts or horses accounts on social media, then so be it. But don't feel that you have to follow particular people, even if they're your family. You might have heard of this before, but it's important to sort of think about the 5 ways to well-being, really. It's very clear, evidence-based, that there are 5 things that we can do to help us feel mentally well each week, each day. So they're connecting with others, keeping those relationships that are nurturing to us. Also, the connection can be about helping others, so doing voluntary work, coming into contact with people that you wouldn't normally come into contact with, making, that for most people, if they do voluntary work, they're doing it because they get a real buzz from helping other people, and that buzz is makes our mental health feel better. Learn, so that constant curiosity about the world, learning about different things, whether it be taking the opportunity at home to do the baking or the gardening, or any e-learning, just a way of stimulating your mind, really. Take notice, be mindful. I'm a huge fan of mindfulness, and mindfulness in its absolute essence is nothing more than living in the moment. So I can sometimes allow my thoughts to race, and I'm thinking about the future too much, and the what ifs. Mindfulness helps bring me back to the here and now, and it helps stop doing that sort of catastrophizing that, well, if I'm not able to make to that meeting, then what are they going to say? What's going to be decided? What if, that constant sort of thought pattern. If you can recognize that, then actually mindfulness is really useful to help sort of do some grounding. And there's lots of support around mindfulness, and something like the Headspace app is one that we would often recommend. Giving back, so spoke about voluntary work under the connection petal of well-being. Giving back is similar to that, so it is that making sure that you are part of your community and that you are doing things which are helping other people. It's a really powerful way of keeping ourselves well as obviously helping others. And being active, we talked about the exercise earlier on. I think, if things are starting to feel a bit out of control, it is really important to recognise that there is support out there, and that getting support isn't a sign of weakness, nor is it a sign that you will end up in a psychiatric hospital or, you know, sort of under the care of a psychiatrist or any of those sorts of things. You know, so the vast majority of people that reach out for help are supported outside of the mental health, the formal NHS system, really. So never be afraid of reaching out. As part of our response to the pandemic, Bear Me in Mind is part of the new 24/7 helpline, mental health helpline for Birmingham and Solihull. And we answer the phone between 9 a.m. and 11 p.m. And then the mental health trusts do the overnight. But we're able to send people self-care packs that sort of suit their interests. We're able to help get people into counselling, so being able to talk to a highly qualified person about how they're feeling really quickly. So, you know, sort of whilst there are some delays in the mental health system and some huge waiting lists, actually, you know, within Birmingham and Solihull, there's been a lot of investment to make sure that people who need to talk have got that ability to talk to a qualified person very quickly, as in within the next 48 hours or certainly within the next week. Do have a look at our website, follow our social media accounts if it makes you happy, but do have a look around. And also the National Mind website has got a huge amount of really great leaflets and articles and information on all types of mental health issues and well-being issues, and just how to stay well during this time. It is a difficult time, and you know, I think just to repeat the end point really about it is normal at the moment to feel more anxious than we would normally. It is normal at the moment to be struggling a bit more with our mental well-being. We are in the middle of a pandemic, and that is scary. There is something that's invisible that's out there that effectively is killing some people. That is a really scary situation to be in. Normal to feel anxious. So do the sort of exercise, the connection, looking after yourself, etc. If your anxiety is stopping you from being able to enjoy your life or being able to go outside, then please do reach out to us and we can get you some help. And it's all confidential help. And it just enables us to, it enables all of us to be able to catch things and do things at the right time, rather than it ending up being a real crisis. So please stay well, please look after yourselves, please be kind to yourselves.
Right. Good Lord, I hadn't thought that far ahead of most of this stuff. I've been struggling through from working from home, and this was before the pandemic. I'm a very people person, and being, you're working in your bedroom. So if you have got any questions, please do put them in the chat and we will answer them. Well, we will get answers as best we can and share them with you. So I believe, just going to double check, is that slide number 1? Yeah, it is. Time to bring in Bruce.
Who?
Hello, Bruce.
Hello, Michael. How are you?
Oh, Michael. Oh, God, am I in trouble?
No, you're not. I just prefer formality, as you can tell.
Yeah, well, let's put it this way. The first time I ever saw you on stage was with colourful hair and a guitar.
Well, unfortunately, the lockdown has put paid to the colourful hair, so now I'm basically looking very much like Father Ted stunt double with my my silvery locks. But there is a guitar up there. I don't know if you can see it. No, pointing the wrong way, I think.
As long as there is a musical bit of your life, then the rest of the world isn't good. So I believe you're going to be talking about browsers.
No, I'm not going to be talking about browsers. I'll be talking more holistically about the web as she should be, how she is, and where she's going.
Okay, this is going to get interesting. Right, so I'm going to drag in your screen and disappear so that you can engage your audience.
Dragging in my screen. Am I on? Or you can see my thingies on the side, can't you? Gosh. Let me sort that out. Well, hello everybody. It's a massive pleasure to be here. Building on what Helen just said before me, you're basically looking at a proto talk, because when I agreed to do this, I didn't know that A, I'll be starting a full-time job 3 days ago, and B, my wife's mother would be having open heart surgery yesterday, so we're waiting for her to recover. So I haven't actually been looking terribly closely at the slides. Second announcement. I have no idea if anybody can hear me, actually, because all I can see is my screen. So I'm just going to carry on and assume that this is being broadcasted to the world. The second announcement is there is a new image format, .avif, and my podcast partner, Vadim Makiv, and I disagreed in our last edition of the F word about how you pronounce it. So I want to avoid another GIF schism. So AVIF is henceforth called Avif, as in Selavif. Okay, so my talk is called "Whose Web Is It Anyway?" Does one of you want to text me and tell me whether anybody can hear me? Anyway, whose web is it anyway? My name's Bruce Lawson, and I am an HTML alcoholic. In the old days, when one was allowed to travel outside one's house, I went to Tokyo, and Mike Smith TM, who is at the W3C, very proudly took me to this department store in Tokyo where they had a shop called HTML World Standard. It's a gentleman's leisure wear, but the guy who used to ran it used to be a web developer, and therefore called HTML World Standard. And the security guards looked rather shocked at me posing so alluringly in front of it, but there you go. This, my dear chums, is a bunch of hippies. And a bunch of hippies is pretty much how you can describe the people who made the early web. I don't know if you know this guy. This guy is Sir Uncle Timbo, or Tim Berners-Lee, as you probably call him, but you know, he's a mate of mine. And he invented the web, of course, recently as in old man recently, in 2012, Sir Uncle Timbo took the stand at a court case when Microsoft et al. Were defending a case against a bloke called Michael Doyle, who ran a company called Aolas, who believed they had a patent on the idea that you could click to actually start multimedia content. And Tim Berners-Lee and the W3C wrote to the court and asked to appear. And Jennifer Doan, whatever that's called, a lawyer representing Yahoo and Amazon, led the questioning. When Berners-Lee invented the web, did he apply a patent? Did he apply for a patent on it? Doan asked. No, said Berners-Lee. Doan, and who owns the web? We do, said Sir Uncle Timbo. God bless him. Dawkins bless him. Krishna bless him. Another early foundational part of what made the web as we love it what it is today is Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act. No doubt we can all recite it. But it is actually the 26 words that created the internet. It didn't create the internet, but it made the web what it is today. And those 26 words are: no provider or user of an interactive computer service shall be treated as the publisher or speaker of any information provided by another information content provider. This basically allows platforms to say, we are merely a conduit for what somebody is saying, and we are not responsible for what they are saying. This was given to us by Mike Godwin of Godwin's law, the law that as the longer an internet conversation continues, the likelihood of somebody being compared to Hitler rises to 100%. There's a really interesting interview with Mike Godwin in I think Slate magazine, saying, did the early internet activists blow it? So Godwin was the co-counsel in a court case called Reno versus ACLU in 97, which was the constitutional challenge to the Communications Decency Act. The Communications Decency Act tried basically to ban porn, not just illegal porn, but porn that it or any judge or anybody could consider indecent. And the Electronic Freedom Foundation got involved. As Godwin said, that section was designed to empower internet companies to remove offensive, disturbing, or otherwise subscriber alienating content without being liable for whatever else their users posted. The idea was that companies might be afraid to censor anything. In doing so, they would be afraid to take on responsibility for everything, which is great, except that these days, of course, the situations have reversed. These days, it's the progressives who are asking for things to be censored, hate speech to be censored, and it's the right who are complaining that they're being censored, which is kind of quite a turnaround from the position in the late 90s. When asked by Slate what he thought they'd got wrong in the early days, Godwin said, I haven't worked out. There we are. Godwin said, another thing we clearly got wrong is how large platforms would rise to dominate their markets. Back in the 90s, we thought that 1,000 website flowers would bloom and no single company would be dominant. And that leads us into the idea of, the wisdom of the crowds. Here's a lovely picture I took. Every doll is different in this market stall in Bangkok. But it's the idea that the crowd is inherently has wisdom is not new. It's from Aristotle, originally coined the term wisdom of the crowds, but it was popularized by a fellow Brummie of mine, Francis Galton. And Francis Galton was a Birmingham-based statistician. And he allegedly, they were at a country fair and there was a skinned cow, and every participant at the fair was asked to guess the weight. And Galton idly said to his friends, if you take the median guess, that will be within 1% of the real weight. And it turned out to be closer to 1%. So there's a statistical basis for the idea that if you have a large enough population sample, the median estimate will probably be accurate. And, the wisdom of the crowds is all very good, but I actually notice more what I call the malice of the mob. Here you can see Stuart Langridge and the Fusion organisers at one of their parties. Here is Francis Galton in his later years. He died in 1911 in Birmingham. But this is my artist's mock-up of how he would have looked if he was looking at YouTube comments or indeed Facebook comments. Because we all know that once you get this massive social networking ability, it leads to terrible things. This is a satellite photograph of northern Burma, Myanmar, where Rohingya villages have been burned down, largely orchestrated by people coordinating A, their hatred, and B, acting upon their hatred by Facebook. Facebook knew this was happening, but they only had one Burmese language moderator who was based in the Philippines, who simply couldn't keep up with it all. And this, of course, is the end result. A massive, horrible refugee camp in Cox's Bazar in Bangladesh, where hundreds of thousands of Rohingya Muslims live, having been forced out from Myanmar. This is organized and orchestrated over Facebook. A VP of Facebook, whose name I've forgotten because I can't see my speaker notes, said in an internal memo, "So we connect more people." That can be bad if they make it negative. Maybe it costs a life by exposing someone to bullies. Maybe someone dies in a terrorist attack coordinated on our tools. And still we connect people. The ugly truth is that we believe in connecting people so deeply that anything that allows us to connect more people more often is de facto good. It is perhaps the only area where metrics do tell the true story as far as we are concerned. Now, you can all flame me in the comments later. I don't actually have a particular problem with this message. If this was a telephone company saying, you know, we at T-Mobile or we at British Telecom connect people, and some people have conversations that are horrible, yes, that's true, but it's still good that people are connected. I wouldn't have a problem with that, except that I detect what you will see in the next slide. Hippopotamus, some cress, and the letter C, or hippo cress C. Good joke, I know, no feedback, whatever. So I want to tell you the story about Vladimir Putin's communist nipples. Now, of course, Vladimir Putin is a jolly good capitalist and a lovely enabler of oligarchs. But as you can see from this Matryoshka doll that I got in Red Square in Moscow when I was lucky enough to go there, underneath Stalin and Lenin and Gorbachev and Yeltsin, you get Vladimir Putin. And there was a meme that went around on Twitter a little while ago, and it said, Russia confirms that its new COVID-19 vaccine has no side effects. And they'd taken one of those photographs of Putin on a horse or wherever he was, topless, looking all ripped and gorgeous, and basically photoshopped, photoshopped a massive pair of boobs on him. And this amused me because basically I'm fucking 10 years old. And this amused me, so I put it on Facebook, and within about 3 seconds of putting it on Facebook, I got an automated notification saying this has failed our content guidelines. So presumably their Mark Zuckerbot had scanned my upload and seen some boobs on Putin and flagged it up. So because Putin used to be in the cage of being a communist, and the sign of communism was always a red star, I uploaded it with red star over Mr. Putin's communist nipples. So you can see Facebook saying your post didn't follow our community standards on nudity or sexual activity. So there's me posting it with red stars on his nipples. And 2 seconds later, you can't post for 24 hours. because you are banned. And I didn't understand that. This is a photograph uploaded by my daughter onto Instagram, because my daughter is a tattoo artist in Birmingham. And anybody in Birmingham, feel free to DM me and I will connect you up if you want a tattoo. This is a shaved male leg with a nipple on it. And this is somebody who specializes in tattooing nipples onto the reconstructed breasts of women who have had mastectomies. So their reconstructed breasts look, more like the original breasts. And she's practicing on her boyfriend's leg, because everybody wants a nipple on their leg. But these people are being taken down by Facebook because of nipples, even when it's a tattooed nipple on a man's leg. And this got so bad that this lady who tattoos women who've had mastectomies, they started a protest. So they inflated this giant boob outside the Facebook HQ in London, which I think is a remarkable thing, because, like I said, I'm 10 years old, so it made me giggle. And also, it's just, it's a righteous thing to do, and it's a nicely done protest. But it got me looking at the Facebook community guidelines. What's interesting to me here, as you can see highlighted maybe, or if you are visually impaired, I'll read it to you, but it says, do not post uncovered female nipples except in the context of breastfeeding, birth giving, afterbirth moments, health-related situations, brackets, for example, post-mastectomy, breast cancer awareness, or gender confirmation surgery, or an act of protest. Two questions there. It's like, well, there are people who just don't want to wear a top. It's not that they are breastfeeding, birth giving, immediately postpartum, had a mastectomy. They just don't want to wear a top. People, there are people who culturally, women don't wear a top because of the weather. But also it astonishes me that it's female nipples. Like, female nipples are therefore deemed to be automatically sexualized, whereas male nipples are not. And also, presumably, the Zuckerbot is looking for a specific type of female nipples, because when they've been photoshopped onto Putin, who is all man, there's a disconnect there. I also note that the Facebook content guidelines say they make an exception for content that was posted in a satirical or humorous context, which mine obviously was. It might not be the best joke in the world, but it obviously is meant to be satire. Excuse me, and cheers. And this worries me, because the World Wide Web is meant to be the exchange of ideas worldwide. What I hate is the cultural imperialism, the exportation of Californian prudish laws upon the web. So a few years ago, I gave a talk in California, in somewhere ghastly called Santa Clara. And I put this slide up. It's an authentic photograph from the 1970s of a student party. And if you can't see it, it's in black and white. There's a guy with a beard, a lady with long hair and a centre parting, all very Joni Mitchell, another guy talking earnestly to a woman. And on a bed, completely fully clothed, are two couples kissing. Now, the reason I put this picture in my slide deck was to say, if you begin having a conversation with your users, this could end up in a long-term relationship. Not the cleverest slide, and certainly not the cleverest the cleverest business point. But I was asked to remove this slide on the grounds that it was sexually aggressive and suggestive of an orgy. And that Californian prudishness really grates at me. This is not suggestive of an orgy. The four people on the bed are demonstrably fully clothed and just kissing. So as an FYI, if you take nothing home from this talk, and I wouldn't be surprised if you didn't because it's incoherent, if you take nothing home from this talk, do not ever accept an orgy to do not ever accept an invitation to an orgy in California, because it's going to be really fucking boring. But fundamentally, Facebook, if nipples revolt you more than Nazis do, you are part of the problem. And I want to say thank you to my stock photography models there. But genuinely, yeah, by all means, tell me what I can and cannot do on your platform. But if you are comfortable with facilitating genocide, but you are uncomfortable with naked women's breasts unless in a medicalized situation, you've got it fucking wrong. Segue, complete scene change to Ad Block Plus. You've probably got this on your computer. You might have it wrapped up actually in your browser or in an extension. It's an ad blocker. It runs inside the Opera browser, for example. The blacklist that ABP uses is built into the browser. But this is a massive threat to our independent web. Axel Springer in Germany is suing ABP for, I think, the third time. This time, the claim is that ABP changes the programming code of websites in order to block inventory, and that this is illegal and infringes publisher copyright. Advertising blockers change the programming code of websites and thus directly access the legally protected offer of publishers. The head of media law at Axel Springer told the German site Heise. So I didn't try to pronounce the German name. I'm sorry, but it's probably Klaus-Hendrik Schering, but I wouldn't want to bet on that. But the nucleus of their claim is that a website is programming code and therefore legally protected, and therefore you are breaking their copyright by interfering with it. Digging deeper, and through a mole I have who gave me the court documents and helpfully translated them into English for me, the crux of their argument, and this is subtle and there's a lot of words on the page, I apologize, and this astonishes me, but I can see how somebody might believe it. Their expert counsel said, compared to the original version excuse me, of HTML, to which many statements still refer with respect to the property of a program, HTML5 shows many characteristics of a programming language, such as concrete control statements. So they're saying that because their code is HTML5 and not HTML4 or previous, that it's a programming language and therefore copyrightable. The reason they define it as a programming language is control statements or commands cause the program with the browser to at least maintain certain priorities when processing programs. Block, i.e. immediately now, default, only at the very end, defer, or parallel, async. In other words, they're picking upon these attributes of the script tag to suggest that HTML5 is a programming language. And they say this means that the requirements for a computer program, such as those mentioned in the response to claim, are met. And in German law, case law defines a computer program as a sequence of commands which, when recorded on a machine-readable medium, are capable of causing a machine with information processing capabilities to display, execute, or achieve a specific function or task or a specific result. In other words, Axel Springer are claiming that because they use defer async, their code is HTML5 and thus a programming language, and therefore at the Adblock Pro extension is violating their copyright. Now, I don't know much about the German legislature. Maybe it's not like the British legislature. Here you can see a wonderfully diverse group of judges in outside the Old Bailey. But I'd be willing to bet that the people who are ruling on this case don't necessarily understand the malleability, the inherent malleability of HTML and CSS and our relationship with our browser. Excuse me. I would press mute, but I'm on a full screen, so I can't. Our browser in W3C speak is a user agent. It works for you. It is your butler. It is your gopher. I use the term pun intended. There is a glorious history of browsers actually interfering with websites in order to make the user experience better. The user being you and me, not the person who made the website. There is a whole list of interventions that browsers routinely make on the WCAG list. Over the course of its existence, the web has accumulated a multitude of standards and common patterns. While most of these are beneficial for both developers and users, if abused, intentionally or otherwise, web APIs can sometimes be a detriment to user experience. An intervention is when a user agent decides to deviate slightly from a standardized behavior in order to provide a greatly enhanced user experience. Because of its nature, it must be done sparingly and with extreme prudence. Now, we see this all the time. We see this with things that block ads. We see this with extensions that allow you to apply a user style sheet so that you can change background colors. Arguably, we see it in browsers when you can bump up the font size or zoom in. We see it in Firefox. We see it in Opera when you have an ability in the settings to ignore the fact that the developer has said user scalable equals no and allowed you to pinch zoom anyway. We see it with pop-up blockers. I saw it today with the idea that, excuse me, target rel equals underscore blank nakedly is a security vulnerability. So browsers treat browsers treat target equals underscore blank as implicitly saying no follow, no referrer in order to ameliorate that security vulnerability. If this Axel Springer lawsuit actually happens, and if this rolls out Europe-wide, as it could do if the German courts fined for Axel Springer, this could seriously undermine the idea that your browser is an agent that works on your behalf. This went to court on August the 18th. It was adjourned until next year. I will follow it and get the documents translated into English and alert you, because I think that we all need to look at this. If the German courts find that browsers, extensions screen readers are not allowed to interfere with the program as desired by the developer, we will all greatly lose out. This is a map of the UK, and I've marked Nottingham. And by complete coincidence, this is a bloke called Mark Nottingham. Mark used to be on the technical architecture group of the W3C. He's a big noise in the Internet Architecture Board and the IETF, which is probably the Internet Engineering Task Force. And they have recently published a new RFC 8890, which states the internet is for end users. And this might seem obvious to me and to you listening, although I don't know who you are, but hi. But I'm really glad to see this actually written down. On his personal blog, Mark explains why he drafted this on behalf of IAB. He says, when a decision improves the internet for end users in one jurisdiction, but at the cost of potential harm to others elsewhere, this is not a good trade-off. As such, we effectively designed the internet for the pessimal environment. I had to look up pessimal, obviously, in retrospect, as the opposite of maximal. It's the worst possible case. The IETF were asked to standardize or asked to rubber stamp standard for wiretapping. And instead of agreeing to rubber stamp it, they said they would have nothing to do with it, even though technically the idea was sound, but culturally, socially, what have you, the idea was fucking awful. And that's a comp sci term, obviously. And Mark goes on to say, at its heart, the internet is for end users. It's a call for IETF participants to stop pretending that they can ignore the non-technical consequences of their decision. A call for broader consultation when making them, and one for continued focus on the end user. Ultimately, end user impact is at least as important as the technical considerations of a proposal. Big round of applause for the IAB and Mark there. In the interview with Godwin on Slate, they asked him, how he sees the future. Godwin says, when ordinary people are empowered to come together and work on a common humanity-benefiting project like Wikipedia, unexpectedly great and positive things can happen. Wikipedia is not the anomaly my journalist friend thinks it is. Instead, it's a promise of the good works that ordinary people freed by the internet can create. I no longer argue primarily that the explosion of freedom of expression and diverse voices facilitated by the internet is simply a burden we dutifully have to bear. Now, more than I ever did 30 years ago, argue that it's a solution. Now, this is very similar to the words that were said by the VP at Facebook that I quoted before the Putin story, but the VP at Facebook was being hypocritical and Godwin isn't. I do not share his optimistic view of the crowd or the malice of the mob. But I do have great optimism in people younger than me, and most of you there are probably younger than me. I grew up, in fact, I was an adult. In fact, I was married and had kids before the internet really was part of most people's everyday lives. These days, no kid's ever going to be lost again because you've got GPS, you've got a map. Nobody ever need feel disconnected again because you can connect. These are my kids a long time ago. My son in the hole and grinning to the camera, he was logging on to the web through dial-up, calling up Firefox and playing Teletubbies on the CBeebies site before he could speak. These kids have grown up with the web. But I think what we lack most of all in the world, not just the UK, is the ability to see what the web is and to filter it adequately. And I think the older you are, the least adept your filtering is. When my kids were little, I used to tell them the story of this. Now, when they were 5 and 7, I used to say, imagine that I tell you a story, and imagine that one of these scary skinheads runs up to an old lady who's just walking down the road, pushes her over into a puddle of water, rolls her around and runs off. And my kids say, what a terrible, bad skinhead that is. And I'd say, imagine that I tell you that this skinhead was sitting outside and he saw the old lady walking along, and some gasoline had been spilled on the back of her coat, and it had caught a light and she hadn't noticed. So he ran over and he pushed her over and he rolled her in the puddle to put the fire out. And he ran away simply because he didn't want to give his name and address to the police, because he just wanted to help somebody and didn't want any more trouble. What would you say? And my kid said, well, what a great guy. And I say, which one of those stories is true? And they would say, well, both of them are, Dad. And I'd say, yeah, it's the context that matters. And that's why when my kids were little, we would watch BBC News on Monday, CNN on Tuesday, Al Jazeera on Wednesday, Russia Today on Thursday, just in order to make them understand that there is no single truth. And I think what we lack, not just in the UK, but across the world, is education for critical thinking, fact-checking, cross-checking, understanding that not everything you see on Facebook, not everything you see on Twitter, not everything you see on website that's your favorite is true. And if I were to ask attractive people from iStock Photo to write a banner that is totally theirs, honest, they would say education and not regulation is the way that we will preserve not just a technically open web, but a socially open web that serves all of the people. Because the web is not just computers. The web isn't in the clouds. The web is actually these women in Africa. The web is this blind guy in Toronto. The web is these ladies I photographed on a bus in India. The web is this elderly lady in a wheelchair in Taipei. The web is this chap on the New York Metro. The web is this farmer and his granddaughter whom I met when I was in Cambodia. Or as Uncle Timbo said, it is for everyone. Thanks and snogs, or thanks and elbow bumps. Sorry if this was terribly incoherent. Kisses.
I think the only way we can describe you, Bruce, is a character with much enthusiasm and knowledge to share.
Was that utterly incoherent, or did I actually make some sense?
It's coherent, but I can definitely tell that your brain is tangential. Tangential AF, as the kids would say.
The kids probably wouldn't use the word tangential.
Good point, but I was trying to make it PC. Right.
You can say the word shit. I've said the word fuck, and I've shown Vladimir Putin's communist nipples. So you can say my brain is shit as fuck if you want.
True, but I'm meant to be the PC host, so that maybe Hannah will give me the gig next time, or even if I'm lucky, replace Jim permanently.
Yeah, you're the Jim always avoids any talk I ever do.
Let's not pick at that scab, eh?
Can't call me
Oh.
Mr. Cab.
Okay. It's better be questions. We actually have some questions. Right. As above from Steve Love, this is actually a two-parter. Remind us who the tattoo artist was. I believe that's in regards to nipple tattoo. And how does the AI spot the difference between gendered nipples? That's an interesting place to go.
Well, that is an interesting place to go because these were tits on Putin. So, and few people would doubt that Putin's all man, or if you do doubt it, beware cathedral enthusiasts with snow on their boots and Novichok in their backpacks coming to visit your house. So, I don't know. But what I really don't understand is why male nipples are entirely fine and female nipples are not. And I think that says far more about the values of Facebook than how their AI detect female nipples. It's like, why are tits worse than moobs? And I'm sorry I did that gesture, but I'm going to do it again.
It's fine. I would be doing that, but that would be purely for showing off the little Fusion logo.
No, mine is just because I'm a middle-aged man with man boobs.
You're walking me into a hole that I cannot get out of. Okay. We do have another question from David McGinn Nicholson. Question regarding both topics. What do you think we regular plebs can do to fight these issues?
David, I don't know if you're a regular pleb, as in the web developer regular pleb, or a proper pleb and like a normal human being. If you're a web developer, resist requiring Facebook for comments if you can. I know we all have to earn a living, and if your boss says just do it, David, you're going to integrate Facebook for comments, but don't require Facebook for sign up. Don't require Facebook for commenting. Allow single sign-ups. Allow people to sign up with email. Allow them to sign in with bloody Google, whatever. Give people the choice. If you are a proper pleb and not the subhuman, squirming vermin that are web developers, you can do things like report terrible shit that you see. I see terrible shit on social media every day, and I've taken more and more time to report it because so many of us just like tut and roll our eyes, and before you know it, it's been retweeted umpty squillion times. Report it. Say this is unacceptable, because we are social media's product, but also we're their customers, and any organization that fundamentally annoys its customers enough is going to lose. So if we all say, this has irritated me, I don't even care if it comes from Boris Johnson or the orange man in the White House, report it. And don't retweet it. Don't pass on nonsense. Did that answer your question? Probably not.
I think it's a solid answer. We as humans have responsibility to actually exercise the badness in the world by getting rid of it. So reporting it's a good way of doing that.
That is a far more succinct way of saying what I want to do. Can you just take the next questions?
No, because we are going to close up, and there we go. And Hannah has just dropped a link into something usual and tasty that's at the end of Fusion. So, have you got any closing remarks you would like to say, Bruce?
Yeah, just be lovely to each other and respect the web.
You could have just quoted Bill and Ted there.
I'm too old to know any Bill and Ted stuff, mate. I'm still Charlie Chaplin and Laurel and Hardy.
Judgments have been made. Right, I, sir, shall be removing you so we can close out this session then.
Thank you for listening, folks.
Thank you very much, Bruce. There we go. I need to do the screen share thing again. There we go. That's the So that's the talks. Normally at the end of Fusion, Jim would get up on stage and get on his little soapbox and start talking about the Birmingham community and how great it is and the fact that everything is going on. I would like to do that as well, except I don't need as big a box as he does. But well, it turns out people are keeping an eye on what's going around the universe in tech. So the Birmingham calendar, which has been dragged into the Fusion Hub. So if you want to keep an eye on a future Fusion event and what's happening around with virtual meetups and all that sort of goodness, you can go to the Fusion calendar and have an eye on it. And this is the point usually where people just start going, Cozy Club? Well, we can't go to the Cozy Club right now. All as a group will get kicked out. However, wrong keyboard. The wonderful people at Fusion have created a post-Fusion meetup Zoom call so that people can grab a beer and have a chat. So this is the link. I believe Hannah has dropped it in the chat. Look for timestamp 8:48 p.m. and you can copy and paste the link and you can dive in and enjoy. I believe we already have people joining in. Yeah, we do. So I'm going to go and sign off. Thank you very much to our speakers. Thank you very much to Semi, Sani. Thank you for Helen mailing it in the form of a very large video file. Trust me, it's very large. And thank you very much for Bruce to educate us on, well, bad behavior on the internet, people not behaving, and Vladimir Putin's nipples. I never thought I would ever say that on the internet or any way, shape, or form. So thank you very much, everybody. I'm going to sign off. I've been your host, Mike, and have a wonderful evening.